Welcome to Give Me Hope with Johanna, a place where real stories meet real hope. I'm your host, Johanna Vendel, a published author, speaker, and the CEO and founder of the prestigious International Hope Book Awards. On this podcast, we share powerful stories of faith, resilience, and transformation, conversations with authors, survivors, and changemakers who turned life's hardest moments into purpose. If you're searching for encouragement, healing, or a reminder that your story still matters, then you're in the right place. Press that subscribe button now and don't miss a story. So now, let's welcome your host, Johanna Vendel.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Give Me Hope with Johanna. Well, I am here with the author today, Coventina, and she's going to tell us all about her book that she has written and won an award for. Let's not wait and get to introduce Coventina. Hello, Coventina.
Hello, how are you?
I am good, thank you. How have you been after writing your book and winning an award?
Yes, it's been crazy, kind of, I guess, because it was originally published back in 2019 with a different name and a different title, different cover, and then I lost my Amazon account one day, and I had just spoken with a publishing company, this lady that I met her at an event, and so we chatted for like 5 minutes, and she gave me her information, and she left. And a month later, I lost my Amazon account, and all of my books disappeared because I had a few books. I had 3 on Amazon, and then I thought, oh, this time I can actually have my book formatted and make it look a lot more professional and like an actual book. And I was part of Hay House. They have a writer's boot camp. I think it's once a year. And one of the authors, Nancy Levin, she said that you write the manuscript first and then you come up with the title because things can change. And I had an aha moment, right? And so the book was originally titled Life on the Border, Coping with Mental and Emotional Illness. And I just had that aha moment, and my story, along with the majority of the stories that are in the book, all of us are dual diagnosed and in recovery for alcohol and drug addiction and the mental health. And so, yeah, I asked this lady, I said, could you please help me? And so we collaborated on, creating another book cover, and format. And then it was launched on Friday the 13th in December of 2024.
Wow.
And so it was within the first week that it launched, in the Kindle store, it reached number 1 in personality disorders, number 2 in drug dependency and recovery, and number 7 in family health. And I was just
incredible.
Yeah, I was like, wow, and then I just happened to notice, I didn't even realize that Amazon has a new releases list. And I just passed by it, and it was number 25 overall. And with Amazon, that's incredible because thousands of books are published every day, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
so how did you get to this name?
Well, I figured that, okay, I'm dual diagnosed, and I'm actually dually blessed because I am able to share my hope with people who have mental illness, have addiction issues and trying to get find recovery, and also people with who are both. So I actually have 3 different sets of people that I can reach out to and help, those with just the mental illness and those with addiction or that are both. And so that and I'm blessed to be able to help so many people because
With your story.
So because I've walked this path now for September 8th will be the 40th anniversary of my last drink.
This is amazing. Do you maybe want to start by telling us how it started? First, tell us a little bit about your addiction and how you got out of it. Then we'll take it further.
Okay, yes. My story begins when I was 7. And I began having suicidal ideation, and I had all these demons. And when I was 8, I went to a cousin's wedding and I got really drunk. And I realized, wow, those thoughts aren't with me anymore. I thought, ooh, this is what I need to do is drink. And so by the time I was 16, I was probably, an alcoholic. I had to drink with the boys in the neighborhood because they could drink more. And we invited some girls over to drink, and they took a couple of sips and passed out. And I did not get that. I still don't get that. That's the alcoholic mind of mine. Like, why? She took those couple of sips, and after she passed out, we kind of like dragged her over and put her in a corner. And then I proceeded to grab her beer to drink it down because warm beer tastes awful, right? So I didn't realize that it was alcoholic behavior, that I thought that you're supposed to drink alcohol to get as drunk as you possibly can, because I had extended family members who were alcoholics and did that. They were always drunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up as a 7-year-old and being around people that drink all the time, and that they did not even notice that you drink alcohol as well, it's sad to think that you had to grow up like that, but you turned your life around. Do you want to continue with the story?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my immediate family, nobody was alcoholic. It was like aunts or uncles or things like that. And so also when I was 7 and I had those thoughts, I've been a poet since I was like 7 or 8 years old. So I would write my thoughts in poetry form about wanting to end my life, and I just couldn't handle it. And I think that the catalyst for that was we were on a camping trip, and my brother said, I have a secret to tell you, but you can't share the secret. And I'm thinking, well, you're sharing the secret. Why should I keep it? Right. And he said, Mom and Dad aren't our real parents. And I was like, what? He said, no, we were adopted. And he goes, and I helped pick you out. And it was so disconnected for me because by that time we were getting hit with the belt and, wooden spoon and spanked,
Yes.
And spanked a lot. And, I just couldn't understand why that equaled love. And so I thought that they were just pretending to love me. And I think that that's what the catalyst was. And then when I was 17, I met my boss, and, I was captured by his charm, and I ended up pregnant, and I was 4.5 months pregnant when we got married. And then my baby was born 2.5 months early. She was in the NICU for 6 weeks, a week and a half after we got her home. My husband raped me for the first time, and I got pregnant with my second daughter. And every time that he would do that, he would, oh, I'm so sorry, and, apologize profusely, until he did it again. And there was...
When you say that he raped you, being your husband, can you explain that?
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't understand how a husband can rape a wife. So when my daughter, when we went to bring her home, and my doctor said, okay, you need to use protection until the birth control pills kick in. And he didn't want to do that. And so I didn't want to get pregnant again. And so he chased me all the way. I ran outside the apartment and he caught up with me and he knocked me down and he pulled me. He just dragged me all the way back into the apartment and proceeded to rape me. And I was screaming the whole time, and then he put a pillow over my face so nobody could hear my screams. And
yes, because after a baby, you need a little rest. A woman needs to repair,
Yeah. So, that was his whole thing was, I think that he was a sexaholic, because he thought that equaled love. And if he didn't get his way, that it was his way or the highway, basically. Like when we got married, my dad wasn't feeling well, and he would not change his schedule at work so that my parents could, show up for the wedding. So it was just his sister and mom and best man and me. And, my parents were really mad. And something should have told me that something was up, because as soon as we got married and he dropped me off at the hotel room with my new sister-in-law and new mother-in-law, and he took off with his best man, and they were gone for hours doing who knows what, so and then, but like when my baby was born, and then I got to go home, he dropped me off at the house and he took off for Memorial Day weekend. He said, well, I always take off and go to this place on Memorial Day weekend, and I'm not gonna, have anything stop. Yeah. So, he didn't visit her in the NICU, or, you know what I mean? So.
Yes. I mean, which means is you were at the hospital most of the time because the baby was in the NICU, and then he was just around gallivanting and doing his own things. And after you got home with the baby, he felt that he could still do that. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And my first book that I published in 2016 is a book of poetry, and it's called The Freed Soul: From Domestic Violence to Freedom. And so I have a chapter of hopelessness, a chapter of hope, and then a chapter of healing. And it took me 30 years to write it, because I was still in that wound. And Nancy Levin also said, you write from the scar and not the wound. And another aha moment, right? So I revisited that book, and, but this book, I really, like last year when I decided to just concentrate on my book, because I was losing the passion, to do the Reiki, because I'm a Reiki master teacher, intuitive.
I can see that in the background there. I was going to ask you about it.
Yeah. And I have it, all of my awards behind me. But
But you know what? Now that we are on that subject, I think that healed you. This helped you to get better, because just to think about all the energy work you have to work with, you have to get rid of that bad energy to give that good energy out. And I think that healed you. And then there was a time where your children was actually taken away from you.
No, I gave them up.
Oh, you gave them up.
Yes, I called Child Protective Services on myself.
Oh.
And nobody has ever heard of that before. And even the police officers said the same thing, that they've.
But you know what? That is when you realize that something was wrong with you and your children didn't need to see what's going on with you. That is a very, very strong, positive decision that I think a mother can make, to make a choice like that, to call them. Wow. I also have never heard of that.
Yeah. And, because I knew that they would, have a better life. They had a lot better chance of surviving and living without me, because I was so violent with these two little babies. And, it's just the alcohol and then the drugs. And, because it was that year and a half after my parents came and helped us escape from his wrath. And, so when I went through the recovery process, I somehow, I was able to forgive him and realize that he's just a spiritually sick individual. And looking back, he grew up watching his dad beat up his mom. And so that he thought was love, and I get that. And I understand.
And it happens so many times. And the choice that you made to let your kids be taken away from you, that is putting a different kind of help into their lives. Because if you now think about what you just said, how you get raised by parents that treat you like that, eventually what happens? It just happens naturally. You treat your kids that way as well because you think that's the right way. Sometimes people think, I am never going to treat my kids this way. But if that is so enforced upon your life, it's part of your life. And I think you do it because you don't think about what you're doing. It just comes naturally to you. And that's sad to think about it like that.
Yes, because that's the only way that I knew how to raise a child was the way that I was raised, is that harsh discipline. And yeah. And the other thing is, in recovery, I've heard so many parents that say that they abused their children while they were in a blackout, when they're drinking. I never had that luxury because the abuse was when I was sober because I couldn't handle life. I was like a rageaholic. I couldn't function. I had my friends, do all of my housework and the laundry and taking care of my kids, and the dishes. And I just sat on my couch and watched them do all the work. I was that incapable of doing anything. I was unemployable. So I had something had to change, and that was the catalyst, was calling Child Protective Services. And when I had 7 years of sobriety, I met somebody, and he was so special. When we first started dating, I had my daughters at that time full time, just a few months before that, and he had a autoimmune disease. And so he was at high risk of being around people with a cold or the flu or whatever. And my oldest daughter, she had the flu, and he took care of her knowing that he was at risk of getting sick himself. So that was unconditional love that he gave my own child, like right after we started dating. And so when he started, getting ill and getting in and out of hospitals. And then finally one time he told me that he was just going to disappear and start doing drugs again, because then he could, take himself out. He could die quicker because he was tired of suffering. And
a quick question before you move on. So, did you give your children up when you were with your first husband, and then you got them back somehow and then met this new man?
So what happened, I had 5 years of sobriety, and when the weekend that I was supposed to pick them up, I always had friends to come with me, and he always moved further and further away from me so that it was more and more difficult for me to visit. And it was on their calendar and everything. So we showed up, and the house had been abandoned. And I did not know where my babies were. I didn't know where they were. And, and so I called the sheriff and I said, my daughters are missing. Their dad took them away. I was supposed to get them for the weekend. And so I contacted his landlord. I don't even know how I did that. I think it was the lawyer that I hired. She managed to get a hold of him. He took all of the pictures there was garbage piled up in the yard all the way up to the roof. There were broken pipes and like little buckets underneath the sinks. And there were cat and dog feces throughout the whole house. I mean,
And this is a place where they placed your children?
No, this is where they were.
So
he got custody after I gave them up, and they were in foster homes until he showed up and wanted to be dad. So when we went to court, they were like, okay, well, they're going to go with dad. And so I had this visitation rights that I was, picking them up and everything. And this weekend, they weren't there. And so I hired a lawyer. She found him, served him papers. And I was able to present the judge all of the photos that the landlord took of all of the, how in it just, it was so bad. And there were many times where they didn't have electricity. They didn't have, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, so they didn't have heat during the winter. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness. I did not know this until until I went to pick them up and they weren't there. And so when we went to court, the judge looked at those photos and said, because he was supposed to appear in court with the girls. And the judge took one look at the pictures and like, okay, well, the girls are going home with mommy. And everybody was shocked, especially me, because I had been deemed an unfit mother 5 years before that. And sorry, I have a kitty cat over here wanting to get in the way. She loves to get in the way of the camera. Anyway, and so we show up at my apartment. I'm like, okay, now what? And just a few months before that, I started to. I went again with a parenting class, to brush up on my skills because I had gone when I was first sober after I gave them up. And so one of the skills were sending them on a timeout instead of spanking them. And, I always get these, I'm white, I have an open mind. I'm really, in tune to getting messages from wherever, and so we were arguing over, what she was going to wear to school that day. Looking back, like, why? Wear whatever you want. And I finally I was so frustrated. I said, go on a timeout. She said, why don't you go on a timeout? And I thought, that's actually a great idea. Okay. So I went in the bathroom. I was banging the walls and the cupboards and screaming, just letting out my frustration in the shower. And just as I was done and I was getting out of the shower, the door, somebody was knocking on the door, and my younger daughter opens it up and there's a police officer, and she's like, can I help you? He's like, yeah, well, a neighbor heard noises and thought that that your mom was hurting you. And she was like, no, she didn't help, she didn't hurt us. And
she just took a time out.
Yeah. My younger one was like, yeah, we just sent mommy on a timeout. My older one chimed in because she wanted to get all the credit. She's like, no, I sent mommy on a timeout. And
well, how old were they at that time when you then got them back there?
They were 9 and 10.
Okay. Wow.
And so when the officer asked, so mom didn't hit you or hurt you in any way? And my younger one was, no, but I would hate to see what those bathroom cupboards look like.
Oh, that is so mature of them,
Well, and then like even when they were, 2.5 and 3.5, when I first got sober, and I would go to these meetings, like I went to a group that had midnight meetings, and I would pick them up for the weekend. On Friday we would go to a meeting and they would have their coloring books, and my friends would give them hot chocolate, and they were nice and quiet during a meeting. And one time I was just having a breakdown. I didn't even know what it was, but I just started sobbing. And my older one, she climbed up in my lap and put her hands on my face like this. And she's like, Mommy, I think you need a meeting. And then she says, well, you know, me and Sissy will be really good, right, Sissy? You know, and then she's like, we can bring our coloring books and your friends will give us hot chocolate and everything will be great. So off to the meeting we went.
That is so nice, you know, to hear that they actually started to take care of you in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of parties and picnics and dances, you know, that they also attended. So they were really, it's fun, you know, to visit with Mom. And, you know, so that,
Yes.
And I promised myself that I would never say one bad word about my ex-husband, especially to my kids, ever. And I never did.
Because it's their father, you know.
Exactly. And they live with them and they idolize him, and they're, you know, they're like my youngest one. She said, yeah, I was daddy's girl, you know. And, you know, yeah, that hurts a lot sometimes, you know, but yes, I get that, you know, because he was her parent, right? And I'm just really grateful that they did have a life, you know. And
that is nice. That's very nice to hear, you know, that they did have that.
Yeah. And then when my mental health challenges resurfaced was when my second husband, after he, you know, we were dating for, you know, for like 11 months, I think it was. Well, we were together for 11 and a half months, but in the beginning, you know, and I didn't really know. He just told me, you know, that he might have, you know, he might be HIV positive, when he already knew that he was, but he wanted to tell me. He just didn't know how to tell me. So he decided, you know, after talking with his counselor and all these other people of how to tell me, he chose to call me at work, you know, and the little brat. And, you know, he says, yeah, I was, you know, I was diagnosed with HIV. He did not say when, but he seemed like he was completely okay with it. You know, like there was, you know, and he's like, oh, and then there's support groups for family and friends. Like, how do you know that already? You know, kind of thing. So I had this gut feeling, you know, when he didn't tell me, and, you know, honestly, like how long. And about a month and a half into this, I decided, because my intuition is, you know, I have really good intuition, and I'm like, I'm going to confront him and ask him how long. And if he lies, it's over. But if he tells me the truth, then there's something to work with, because there's that honesty. And when I asked him, when I confronted him, he kind of like backed up against the dresser and took a deep breath, and he said something, and I said, that's not what I asked you. You know, I said, how long have you known? And he said, I was diagnosed when I was 18, and he was 22 at the time. And he said that they figured out that he probably got it when he was doing intravenous drugs with different people when he was 13. So he had already had it almost 10 years. And as soon as I said, you know, and so I was like, okay, so he told me the truth. He said that the way he found out was he was trying to clean up his life, because he did a lot of wreckage in his childhood. He was a hitchhiker, and he would, you know, steal from these people. So because he, you know, he wanted to make amends, but he wanted to make amends in a general way. So he tried to join the Navy, and that's when they tested him, and he found out when he was 18, and they denied him, and it devastated him, because he wanted to help. He wanted to be of service, and, you know, and so I share that story a lot because, the Navy didn't honor him. However, his higher power honored him and what he really wanted within his heart, because he passed on Veterans Day. And so you just can't, you can't make this stuff up. It's, I like to share that story, that
Yes.
he was honored.
Oh,
So
that is such a powerful story, and look, everyone leads their own life.
Mhm.
And in life can get tough. And somewhere in our minds, we all say that I'm going to try to be a better person again, and maybe that time that he was your husband, he wanted to be that better person.
Well, and all he wanted before he passed was to have a family of his own. And that's when the girl, so he came into our life when I had the girls for 4 months. And so he had that, he had the family, there's 2 daughters. We had 2 cats and a dog, so we had this family. So his life was complete. And experiencing that unconditional love, my life was complete, because I knew from the very beginning of my life, actually, I knew that sex did not mean love, right? I mean, it's just and you can have love in your life, and you could be a partner, and you don't have to have sex, because the last time he was healthy enough was on our wedding night. And so when I share with some of my close friends, like, yeah, I had a sexless marriage, but it was 5.5 months, and I was taking care of him. And then when he disappeared, I didn't know whether or not he was dead or alive, and that's when I ended up in the psychiatric hospital the first time. I was in the hospital 4 months after I escaped from my abusive ex-husband, and they didn't help me. So they misdiagnosed me. They gave me the wrong meds. And then I had a manic episode. And so I was in the hospital multiple times, and, until they finally got it right. And what happened is, that's when I discovered Reiki 20 years ago in March, and everything changed for me. It was, my mental health was more stable. I was able to dive a lot deeper into all the trauma that I had, to heal that. And then recently I went through the EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that's when I was able to heal a lot more on that. It's like the peeling of the onion. And so every time that I find a tool to use, a coping skill that works for me, I get excited and I share that with everybody. Hey,
and
try
you
this.
can peel off another layer that was bad.
Yeah. And then, so last year I decided, and like I said, I get these downloads, and on New Year's Day, I was inspired to create my own pick-me-up jar. And I was like, okay, where's my jar? It's around here somewhere. But it's this, mason jar, and it's decorated with sparkly stickers on it. And I use these mini sticky notes and the bright colored ones. And I write down a positive affirmation, words of encouragement, or a little action step to take when you're in that moment. And, so you just write it down, and, you just shake it up, and whatever comes out is your pick-me-up.
That is nice.
Now, don't get me wrong. I have, a few different affirmation decks from other authors. However, I'm not connected from the inside. So when you do this on the inside and you look at this pick-me-up, and it's from you, and it just empowers you, and it builds self-esteem and self-worth, and so it's just like. And then in February, I had a nightmare that I wanted to end everything, And when I woke up, I started to cry, and I was like, what was that about? And it was like, hey, you had to pick me up, silly. And I'm
I also always say that you need to kind of love yourself first, love yourself first. And if you can do that, then someone else can also love you, because who will love you if you don't like what you see? I strongly believe in that. And that's exactly what you also saying. You have to get to a situation where you have to sit back and say, okay, if I want people to love me, I need to do work on myself.
yeah.
And that pick me up jar, if you put positive notes in there, beautiful. Wow. Then you see, that is exactly what one should do, is do that little pick me ups for yourself.
Yeah. And so when I had that nightmare, and so I'm part of this group that you just can't make this stuff up. And I shook it. What came out was, your life is valuable. And then I started crying with gratitude, and yes, my life is valuable. And, yes, ever since I was 44 days sober, I wrote a poem about hope. It was my favorite word because I was hopeless. And then I found recovery, and I was so full of hope that I wrote this poem at 44 days, to the fellowship. And, it's my gift to you. And, just thank you. The fellowship is priceless. No one could ever compare. I went and tried this life. Everything, each day is precious and new, and I give you all of my hope. It's my gift I give to you. And so even from the beginning of my recovery, it's always been hope. And then about a year and a half ago, during my journaling in the morning, I had another download, and hope stands for helping others process emotions. And I thought, wow.
I must say, I must stop you there. I loved that when I saw you broke it up like that. Do you want to say it once more out loud?
Yes,
Oh,
I help others process emotions. And I thought, wow, I've been doing that since I was about 10, because kids used to come to me for advice because I always knew the answers to their problems. Nobody knew how I knew. I didn't even know how I knew. I just knew, and everybody accepted it. Looking back, I should have charged them their allowance for my services, because in 2001, I began doing tarot readings, for like a side job. And this is what I do. This is who I am. This is what I've always done. And, and then I'm so excited because I'm launching my very first seasonal Hope and Healing Recovery Circle. It begins July 7th, and registration, I'm going to be sending that announcement that it's open now. And there's a study manual that I'm almost finished with, and guided meditations, and it's a 7-step path to lasting recovery. And it's a crown to root chakra path. So I start with a crown and go down, instead of the root being the first chakra. It's actually, for me, the 7th chakra, because how I was able to change my life is I have that spiritual awakening. Like, okay, everything needs to stop. I have to surrender. And then, like, I see now, that I need to change, and then start to speak up to say, help me, I need help, guide me. Like, I chased everybody around like a lost puppy dog when I was first sober. Oh, come here and go there and, be of service and share your story. Okay. Yeah. And then with the heart chakra, it's all about that self-discovery, going through the process of an inventory and trying to figure out what your assets and liabilities are, what behaviors that you need to change, those types of things. And then you have the solar plexus, your power chakra, and that's all about reclaiming your power and courage and strength, with sharing all of that inventory that you have written with a confidant, with somebody. And then you go through the amends process, and that emotional renewal is the sacral chakra. And when you find, when everything comes together like that, that's your foundation for life, is the root chakra. And that's the path, that's the method. And I trademarked it, so yeah.
So then you published your book after all the recovery that you've been through. Do you want to take us through your time that after you published your book, what happened?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's the International Impact Book Awards at the gala. And I have my, and so that was the second award. So the first one was the Book Fest Awards, and in both categories, so I have the mental health and the addiction recovery categories. So I enter the book into both. And so it won second place for both categories. Sorry, I'm like, and then
you definitely have such a powerful story, and did you go to Author of the Year last year with your book as well?
No.
Or when were you at the International Impact Book Awards?
Oh, that was this past February, at the end of February.
Oh, this year.
Yeah.
Okay, because I did see pictures of you on Facebook, and that is where I got this picture from. And I was just not sure when you were there. Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was, so I have two of the little stickers on the book, and then now I have three. And and then it was the Positive Impact Awards, and then you came along, and I have no idea. I have no idea, probably because I post, and then the algorithms, right? And then it's like, hey, here's another awards. And then when I was looking at the categories, and I contacted you because the book could have been in 7 categories, I think it was. And then I saw the Hope Ambassador, and you said, yeah, enter it into that one. I'm like, oh, okay. And then when you sent me the information, the announcement that I won the Hope Ambassador, I'm like, that's my new job title. I mean, that's like my new identity, actually, because especially with my spiritual business school teacher, he said, yeah, as soon as Coventina says that she's a Hope Ambassador, I don't need any more explanation. I could just go to her for help.
See,
it doesn't matter what
it just explains all of those other different genres that you wanted to choose, and if you put all of those genres together, it exactly says what your word hope says to you,
Yeah.
So the Hope Ambassador definitely is a good choice for you and your story. So yes, congratulations on that.
Thank
I
you
believe that you will be going to Author of the Year with this as well, that you are a finalist for Author of the Year this year.
Yes. I can't wait.
I am also looking forward to meeting everyone there and seeing everyone and hand them each a beautiful crystal glass open book trophy.
Yeah,
This
when you
is
open
so
that up,
beautiful.
Yeah, I saw the video of you opening it, and and how big and heavy it was, and I showed it to a friend, and they were like, "Wow!" And I'm like, "Yeah," because even with this,
that's what I'm getting.
Well, yeah, with this award, when they handed it to me on stage, I was like, "Whoa, this is heavy."
It is heavy. It is heavy. I also have one of those awards right here. I
have it.
I was a winner there also last year. I think it was February that I went to Phoenix.
When did you go?
I was in Phoenix February last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I went this year.
Yes. And then I went to my first Author of the Year as well in October. And at that time, I was already busy planning my business and experiencing something that I would be hosting one day soon, and exactly 1 year later, October, we will host our very first prestigious International Hope Book Awards. So it is incredible to honor authors who write stories of hope like you. You know, you've been through so much, but you got up. You got up and you made the choice in your life to be a better person. And look at how many people you are now touching with your story. That alone is incredible.
Yeah, I'm just so,
Congratulations on
thank
that.
you.
Keep
Yeah,
it
thank
up.
yes, I'm so blessed. I met up with a friend that I just happened to see on Facebook, and we hadn't seen each other for a long time. And I just happened to see her post about being at White Sands National Park. And I typed in, "You just passed my house," and because I'm in southern New Mexico. And so she responded back, and, "Oh, well, let's visit. We're going to stay the night." And it's an RV park. I said, "Okay, sure." But I had Toastmasters right before that. And I handed her this book and I said, "Oh, here's a gift. I just wanted to share." So the next morning at 8:30, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm halfway through your book. And can I order, a copy? I want to share this with a friend." I'm like, "Sure." And then she's like, "Can I order 5?" And I'm like, "Sure, you could order as many as you want." So I sent her my website information and she bought 7. And I have no idea who those 7 people are. And then the other thing
And
too
if
is,
someone wants to purchase your book right now as well, the website information is scrolling at the bottom there.
yes,
And you can go to Coventina's website there and purchase her book directly. And I can assure you, if you were wondering if you can get up, then you need to read Coventina's story, and then you're going to want to get up.
thank you.
Incredible. Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you want the signed, discounted signed copy, definitely on my website. Otherwise, you can
Reach
also,
up.
it's also on Amazon and Kindle, and the audio is going to be released because right now it's in review. So it's going to be released like any day now. And so I'm going to be posting that as well. And
That's nice.
I'm going to post those links on my website and on my Facebook and Instagram, everywhere, to let people know, hey, the audio is available now. Yeah.
That is incredible that it's come so far, and that only in 2 years, 3 years since you changed the name.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I mean, so I partnered with my local suicide prevention task force last year and co-hosted book signings to get the message out and to raise awareness and money for the task force because they're nonprofit. And 50% of the proceeds go directly to them. And that's any nonprofit organization, but in mental health or addiction recovery or both. And what happened is I just started showing up to different events. And one event every year, September is Recovery Month. And we had this big celebration. So there were a lot of mental health organizations that were there. And that led me to doing another book signing at another event. And at that event, one of the people, it was a dual diagnosis hospital. And the gal who runs the IOP program, which is the intensive outpatient, she was like, "Hey, would you be interested in teaching holistic coping methods to the patients?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I had been through, because of all the hospitalizations, I've been to IOP, I don't know how many times. So it was a full circle moment because last December, the first thing that I taught was the self Reiki. And then the second one was the pigment jar. I said, those two are my go-tos, for balance and the gratitude and the stability. And so I
Yes,
taught
for
that out
yourself.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Wow. Is there anything, if you can say something to our viewers today, that can encourage them if they are in the same situation that you were in? Is there anything that you would like to tell them, especially?
Yes. There's two. Turn to the light, no matter how dim, and keep walking one foot at a time. And remember that one day at a time may be way too much for you to handle, and an hour might be too much. But we can get through whatever we're going through one breath at a time. And
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Coventina, it was so nice to meet you in person, and I cannot wait to meet you at the gala, where I will be handing you your trophy. And good luck, best of luck in Author of the Year. I am grateful that I am not the only one choosing the winner there, because there are so many incredible stories out there. But I am best of luck. You stand such a good chance to win a good prize there, and you have already won the biggest prize of all, and that is your freedom to now live your life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And I want to say to you how proud I am of you for coming this far. I am so proud to hear stories like this and to see the results afterwards, and how you're now living your life. You're definitely an ambassador.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, that was Coventina Waterhawk. If you have not read her story yet, I definitely would advise you to grab her book, follow that link below here, and read that story, because you are not alone. You can stand up and you can be the best person that you want to be. Before I close off, I just want to say that I am proud to announce the merchandise for Give Me Hope with Johanna is now available in summer colors. And if you would like to purchase that, you are very welcome to go onto our website, the prestigious International Hope Book Awards, and you can order your Give Me Hope with Johanna shirt there. Thank you so much for everyone who is always giving me a positive message and who's always there for me after I have been through my own heartaches. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been here today. So thank you. I'll be back next week with another incredible story. I'll see you then. Goodbye.